Free Speech for People is a national campaign to amend the Constitution, to overturn Citizens United and the idea of corporate rights rather than people's rights. And it is, as I said, growing. We had almost less than a month after the decision, Donna Edwards, Congresswoman in Maryland, co-sponsored by House Judiciary Chair John Conyers, introduced a constitutional amendment bill to overturn Citizens United. It had 25 co-sponsors, last I checked. The Senate side has a lot of activity. The day after the disclose law got filibustered, and that would have required disclosure in the federal laws so that we would know, who was funding these campaigns. That failed, it got filibustered, and the day after that died in the Senate, Max Baucus, hardly a radical, Montana senator, called for a constitutional amendment and has introduced language. There's now 6 or 7 senators who've said, yes, we need to amend the Constitution. And there's state resolutions throughout the country, and I'd urge you to look at that and whether that's a tool in New Hampshire that you want to use, calling on Congress to send to the states a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United and restore the First Amendment to what it was for more than 200 years, which is a protection for the rights, totally unfettered speech rights of the people, but not a tool for corporate money and corporate power to overrule the will of the people. What we stand for at Free Speech for People is that should be decided by the people. And what Citizens United stands for is no. It doesn't matter what the people think. The First Amendment protects corporations and their right, as the Supreme Court sees it, to put all the money they want into our elections. So if you think that a responsive self-government of the people can't survive that doctrine, as I do and many others, then the amendment is the path. And the amendment path can result in the change even without an amendment. I think we saw that with the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment. Failed to get ratified, but it changed the world. I mean, it changed the culture, it changed the conversation with a fundamentally simple proposition that women are equal. Although the amendment didn't get ratified, we have our laws, our culture, increasingly believes that women are equal and will enforce that. Some of the cases in Austin, for example, that I mentioned, are based on a rationale that aggregations of wealth, such as corporate wealth, have a corrupting influence. And there's been this distinction between contributions directly to candidates and what are called independent expenditures. And so far, Citizens United concerned independent expenditures. Remember, it was a nonprofit corporation in Virginia saying we want to do an attack movie, essentially, on Hillary Clinton. It wasn't a contribution to the John McCain campaign, or it didn't involve a contribution to the candidate. So the election laws have distinguished between those what are called independent expenditures and direct contributions to candidates. And the idea of the Supreme Court is direct contributions can have a corrupting influence, can be corruption if they're excessive, and therefore Congress can have limits. So that's why, at least so far, the maximum you can give to a candidate directly is, anybody know, $2,600? $2,400, thank you. $2,400. A spouse couple could give $4,800 to a candidate directly. Yet that can be limited, according to the court so far, because it is considered that if you gave $1 million to a candidate, nobody could withstand that temptation, and that's a corrupting influence. But the court has distinguished between these independent expenditures under a theory that it can't corrupt a candidate because it's more like an issue advertisement. It's not coordinated with the campaign, so the candidate doesn't owe anybody anything. And I think many people feel it's a very unrealistic distinction because it's not like the candidate doesn't know, say, that Exxon spent $1 million to attack the opponent, and that there's not an obligation there.
Is there any alternative to amending the Constitution?
Yeah, thank you. The second part of the question, can Congress develop a record to show? I would hope so, but one of the unique features about Citizens United is the Supreme Court case. We're used to the court deciding on the facts before and reserving issues for another day that don't need to be decided. This court didn't do that. They really went out of the way to send a signal that they didn't want to see that kind of record again. The McCain-Feingold record from McConnell was huge. I mean, there really was you know, some folks think, well, we just need to show more. We develop a better record, and the court will get it. But it's hard to believe what else the court would need to see to know that money is corrupting.
2010 election.
Yeah, well, you know, I wish that were true. I hope that it gives some pause to the court. Did they really need to go there? But if you read the decision and if they stand behind it, you're really flying in the face of some pretty tough language about this sort of unequivocal right to spend money.